Sundays in Song. This is our first episode for the 2022-2023 season. I'm thrilled to be welcoming Morgan Sullivan here, who has written a new set of Preces and Responses for our Recital and Evensong for Hildegard von Bingen. Morgan will also be performing the recital right before the Evensong. Morgan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I want to give the floor to you, but before we do, I just want to say this is a really exciting set of Preces and Responses. It's very easy for this set of evening prayers to, just be, it can almost be a throwaway thing if it's not treated carefully. But you have created such an interesting harmonic world, and each of these prayers has its own personality. So I just wanted to say that up front. What were some of your maybe inspirations? What were some of the things that led you to create this setting?
Well, I have primarily worked in the Anglican tradition my entire career, and so I've had a lot of experience with Preces and Responses, and the ones that I really enjoy are the ones with quite a lot of color to them, and they end up being some of the most difficult to perform because I've worked as a singer. And so one of the most important things for me was to be able to produce the kind of color that I have in these passages, but to make them very easily singable. Mm-hmm. And that stems both from my experience working in the church and also from performing my own compositions, because over the period of COVID, when we were in complete isolation, primarily I was performing my own music, pieces that I composed for myself to be overdubbed 2 or 3 times over. And I found that if I wrote music that was easy to sing, it also sounded much better.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, that's certainly something that I've learned more and more the longer that I work with choirs and experiment. That if you create something that sort of has its own internal logic, it shines all the brighter. So I think that's great. We're having a great time digging into these, and we'll certainly be revisiting them a couple more times throughout the year as we just sort of let those gel. I'm also excited to be collaborating with you on the recital before the Evensong. You've got 2 lovely sets of songs by George Butterworth and Gerald Finzi. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the meaning of some of those to you, particularly the Finzi, which I know that you were excited about?
Yeah, the Finzi is actually very important to me. I spent most of my academic career studying English art song, and while it might be a little weird to sing for the feast of Hildegard von Bingen music by 2 white men, I thought it was nice to actually approach it this way, in that you don't actually hear women singing this music. Mm-hmm. These songs were primarily composed for men. They're mm-hmm. composed for baritones and tenors. And you do see some sort of crossing between women and men of these art songs, but primarily you don't get performances of women singing these pieces. The Finzi in particular was one of my biggest focuses in undergrad and in grad school. And Finzi is just a composer that speaks to me. The poetry that he chooses, the language that he uses harmonically, the way that his voices just lead in a 4-voice texture in textbook counterpoint, while still being some of the wildest sonorities you can imagine. Those are quite a lot of fun to me. Yeah. And it's very angular music at times, but very rewarding to sing. This piece in particular, To a Poet, is a posthumous set. To a Poet was actually a piece that was so important to Gerald that he had the manuscript of it buried under his house in Ashmansworth when his house was being built, and it still is there to this day. It's a very important piece to me in that it's speaking to future generations of poets and of musicians, and the cycle itself is just a beautiful story of a life well lived and the creation and destruction even of art. Mm-hmm.
I think that's great and really perceptive and apt for us to be considering as we're emerging from the pandemic and thinking about all these different issues that surround the creation of art, surround artistic reinterpretation, and even to a certain degree, I've found it interesting to revisit some of the Butterworth and some of the Finzi, which I'm experiencing for the first time, and see some of the aspects of of identity that are wrapped up in there, and I think that's and plus all of the things that you're saying, just the wonderful musical interweavings that they both do. I think it creates a really powerful statement, and it'll be a wonderful way to open the program. Anything else you want to share with us? Any other things that you're working on or percolating these days?
I would just say that quite a lot of the Preces and Responses you will hear in the Finzi, in the piece Entrada. All of the cross relations that you find throughout the piece and the way that the voices lead are inspired by that particular movement of the Finzi. So listen carefully.
I think that's great. Those are some of my favorite, crunchiest moments. So I think that'll be great. We'll look forward to sharing this music with you this Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Morgan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.